In this video, we're going to introduce the basics of what is called the definite article in Koine Greek. I'm going to tell you from the outset that if there is one thing that you should know like the back of your hand, one paradigm that you should memorize very, very, very well in Greek, it is the definite article. The definite article is your very, very, very good friend, and that is going to prove true throughout your Greek journey. So please heed my advice here and learn the definite article well. Learn the definite article better than you learn anything else in your Greek journey. So we're going to jump in. I'm going to introduce the grammatical aspects of the definite article. Then I'm going to introduce the forms of the definite article and give you a little bit of practice writing down the forms of the definite article. So you should have your whiteboard handy as you engage this video, as we're going to intermingle some practice with the introduction. So as to our grammatical basics here, Greek has a definite article, what we in English use as the word the. It sort of usually particularizes a thing, the professor rather than a professor, the particular one. But Greek does not have an indefinite article like English does. In English, this is a or an. Greek usually, if it wants something to be indefinite, the most common way to make it indefinite, to not make it particularized, is to not include the definite article, for the definite article simply to be absence. But Greek is a little bit finicky with the definite article insofar as sometimes it occurs where you might not expect it to occur, and sometimes it does not occur where you would expect it to occur. So the presence or absence of the definite article is not directly an indicator, or is not always an indicator of whether a thing is definite or indefinite. So sometimes you will see the definite article and you'll want to translate it indefinitely in English, and that's okay. Sometimes you will not see the definite article in Greek and you'll want to put it in there. You'll want to put the in there in English, and very oftentimes that is also okay. If you sort of intuit that, there's usually a good reason in Greek that we're not going to talk about yet of why something might actually be definite in Greek, and you want to translate it definitely in English, even though the definite article is not there. The other thing to be aware of with respect to Greek is that the definite article will often be used with names, and particularly names that are what is called indeclinable. That is to say, they do not change, they do not decline for their different cases. So for example, Jesus often does not decline. So if we want to know whether Jesus throws or Jesus is being thrown, with this one, the ha here is the nominative definite article in the singular. So it's going to tell us that Jesus is in the nominative, even though Jesus's name is does not change to indicate that it's in the nominative. And then down here, we know that Jesus is the object. So if we are marking it with a rectangle up here and a circle down here, we know Jesus is the object because ton is the accusative singular definite article. So the definite article will appear with names, and particularly indeclinable names, and we will not translate the Jesus because we are not in the Big Lebowski. We will just translate as Jesus here. And lastly, the article will always match the noun it goes with in case, gender, and in number. So the noun that follows a definite article, and as we'll see later on in the semester, sometimes it doesn't directly follow it. You won't necessarily have definite article and then the noun that follows it. Greek can stick things in between the definite article and the noun with a device called hyperbaton. Don't worry too much about hyperbaton now. We'll talk about that in a later semester, but it's a word that I will later on repeat often to you. But Greek can stick in between the definite article and the noun a number of different things, but you know that the definite article goes with a particular noun because it is always going to match that noun in person and gender and number. So If the noun is nominative masculine singular, the article is also always going to be nominative masculine singular without exception. These are the various forms of the definite article. These are the things that you should know very, very well. It can be a little bit frustrating that Greek has 24 different ways to say the English word the, and I understand that, I get that, but I promise you in the end, you are going to be grateful that you learned this paradigm well, and it is going to be very, very helpful for you that Greek has 24 different ways to say the word the. Because Greek is a highly inflected language, different words are going to change in all different kinds of ways, as we have already seen. And if you know this paradigm really, really well, it's going to help you to be able to identify the case, gender, and number of all kinds of different nouns and other parts of speech that are to come. So once again, this looks like a lot here. I get that, but it's going to behoove you and it's going to help you greatly in your Greek journey to memorize these forms. So a couple of different comments here. First, when we think about the stem or the sort of base or the root of our definite article, it's going to be a rough breathing mark, as you see up here, the ha sound, or a tau. And it's to these rough breathing marks or to these taus that an ending is added, or in the case of up here, is not added. So you think of the stem or the basic form of each of these as the tau or the rough breathing mark there. The masculine and the neuter follow the second declension pattern, whereas the feminine follows the first declension pattern. So you can still associate and you can still use our mnemonics from the second declension. If you remember our friend's name from the second declension, that's right, Swain Ionessus, and then our friend from the first declension, that's right, Asina Ionesos. So these definite article endings are going to follow the second declension for the masculine and the neuter and follow the first declension for the feminine. And as was also the case with second declension nouns, the neuter is going to be identical in the nominative and the accusative. So notice how we have ta, and again, ta and ta, though down here with an alpha rather than an omicron. So these are going to look different. They're going to look exactly the same as one another, but they are going to look different from what is over here in the masculine. So in the genitive and the dative of both the singular and the plural, the neuter looks exactly the same as the masculine, but the nominative and the accusative in the neuter is going to look different than the nominative and the accusative in the masculine. And with respect to these ones that look exactly the same, the only way you're going to know whether it is nominative or accusative is by the context of the sentence. So the context of the sentence will usually make it clear whether the definite article is going with a noun that is the subject of the sentence in the case of the nominative, or the object of the sentence in the case of the accusative. So I said just a moment ago that we have our friends helping us here for the forms that you can use those mnemonics of Swain Ionessus and Asina Ionesos with respect to the endings here. And you can see that I've put that up onto our screen here. Doesn't work quite as well for the neuter. You sort of have to remember the differences as we did with the second declension, sort of memorize the forms and then fill in the neuter from there. And the only sort of exceptions here is that we don't have a vocative definite article. So there's no epsilon here for the end of Swain, and there's no alpha here for the end of Asi na, because there is no vocative for the definite article. And the other exception is that the beginning here, we don't have the sigma with respect to the nominative singular that begins Swain's name. So for the definite article, you almost think of it as Wayne Ionessus. And then there's no alpha here because this uses the eta, the eta endings rather than those alpha endings. So it's almost like Isina Ionessos when it comes to the definite article. But the sort of basic letters here you can sort of map back on with a few small changes. So the mnemonic may continue to be helpful for you here. It may also continue not to be. And once again, if the mnemonic is not helpful for you, don't feel at all like you have to use it. So a couple of more observations about the definite article and these forms, and specifically with respect to how I suggest you memorize these forms. And remember, the definite article, your very, very good friend. Knowing these forms well, memorizing them well is going to help you tremendously on your Greek journey. So I encourage you to memorize from top to bottom. That is, don't go left to right. Don't go ha, hey, ta, tu, tes, tu, to, te, to. Rather go ha, tu, to, ton, hoi, ton, tois, tus. So going from top to bottom rather than from left to right. And I encourage you to start with the nominative, especially with the masculine. Start here, get these ones down, and then fill in the neuter from there. So if you remember that the neuter is going to be different in the nominative and the accusative, but is going to be identical to the masculine in the genitive and the dative, you can just move these ones over and then remember what those exceptions are. So my encouragement would be to start with the masculine, going down, move over to the neuter. You can fill these in, still going from top to bottom. So starting with the masculine, moving over to the neuter. The neuter, nominative, and accusative are identical and differ from the masculine. We've already talked about this here. This is this, and this, how they are the same as one another. But they are different from, maybe we should put an X or something on this line, but they are different from what you see over here. So remembering that. And so I'm going to ask you to have your whiteboard handy now. And what we're going to do is engage this particular rule with respect to this paradigm. So you're going to fill in some things, but it's going to be a little bit easier because we're going to have all of the other stuff up there. So go ahead and see if you can pause and fill in the entire paradigm for the neuter here, already having the masculine up there for you. All right, so it's going to look like this. Again, our tu and our to, our tone and a tois are going to be exactly the same. And the ta and the ta are going to be our neuter forms, and they're going to be exactly the same in the nominative and the accusative of the neuter, though differing from what you find in the masculine. So again, neuter, nominative, and accusative are identical to one another, and they are different from what you find in the masculine. The masculine and the neuter, again, both follow our friend from the second declension, Swain Ionessus. So knowing that our friend Swain Ionessus helps us out with respect to these endings with a few little minor adjustments and suggestions, what I'm going to do here is take away both the masculine and the neuter. So wipe off your whiteboards, and I'm going to ask you to fill in both the masculine and the neuter forms of the definite article. I'm going to leave Swain Ionessus up on the screen as your helpful mnemonic here. All right, so taking Swain away, this is what this looks like. We have ha, tu, to, ton, hoi, ton, tois, tus. Once again, the nominative and the accusative are different from one another in the masculine, but they are the same as one another in the neuter and differ from what you find in the masculine. And our next observation to make here is that the feminine is going to follow the first declension. Asina Ionessos is going to be maybe somewhat helpful for us with respect to these forms here of the feminine definite article. So what I'm going to do is leave asina up onto the screen, but I'm going to take away these forms and ask you to fill in or to write down, again, I suggest from top to bottom, the different forms of the feminine definite article. All right, so it should, again, taking asina away, look like this. Hey, remember that ha sound, rough breathing mark above the eta there. Hey, taste, tay, tain. High, again, rough breathing mark. High, tone, taste, toss. All right, our practice is going to get harder in just a moment here, so I'm going to have us go ahead and jump in for a high five. I'm going to get a little bit bigger here. Jump in for a high five for that practice that you've just done as we move into something just a touch harder as we end this video. So 1, 2, 3, high five. Boom. Way to go. Good work. Super proud of you. All right, so go ahead and take one more glance at our full definite article paradigm. Erase your whiteboards, and what I'm going to do next is take away most of this paradigm and ask you to fill in on your whiteboard in a lecture pause here. So take one more look, take it all in. And now go ahead and see if you can fill in. Again, I suggest going from top to bottom, moving from masculine over to neuter and then back to feminine is my suggestion. Filling in the forms of the definite article here on your whiteboard. All right, so it's going to look like this. Go ahead and check and correct yourself here as I read through them. We have ha, tu, to, tone, hoi, tone, tois, tus. Again, sort of working from those second declension endings. I then suggest moving over here. You can, working from top to bottom, remembering that the neuter nominative and accusative are going to be the same as one another. They're both going to be ta. They're both going to differ from the masculine. So we have ta, tu, to, ta, with the tu and the to being the same as over here in the masculine. And then again, the nominative and the accusative being identical to one another, though different from the masculine. And again, pronounced as ta, though with an alpha rather than an omicron. Ta, tone, tois, ta. So once again, let's go in for a high five for your great practice there. If that took you a little bit, that's okay. It should. As you memorize, it's going to be hard at first and will get easier the more you do it. The more you build those neural connections for the definite article, the easier it becomes. So the best way to practice this is to practice recalling the information even when it feels really difficult. So if it took you a while, that's okay. Great work. Let's go in for a high five, and then we're going to do one more practice after that. 1, 2, 3, high five. Boom. So what I'm going to do next is take away the entire paradigm. So there's not going to be anything on there except for the singular, plural, not in the cases, nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and the genders there. So I'm going to take away all the Greek definite articles and ask you to go ahead and fill it in on your own. So I particularly encourage you to remember those first three, the ha, hey, the ta. And so while I suggest working top to bottom, oftentimes it behooves you, if you can remember those first three, write those in and then work from top to bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and go away here, and the Greek definite articles are also going to go away. So go ahead and pause and write in the entire paradigm on your whiteboard. All right, it should again look like this. Let's go through it one more time. We have ha, tu, to, ton, hoi, tone, tois, tus, hey, tace, tay, tain, high, tone, tice, toss, ta, tu, to, ta, tone, tois, ta. All right, and one more time, all of your really, really good work. High five on 3. 1, 2, 3, boom.